Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast. This is episode number 11 with Henah Parikh, which we recorded about a month ago, but just really great stuff. Henah just has a really great perspective on social change, social impact, social enterprise, and entrepreneurship, and she just was a real pleasure to talk to. I'm glad we got the opportunity. We'll include everything that she works on in the show notes, so definitely go check it out and go connect with her as well. And with that, and without further ado, this is episode number 11 with Henah Parikh. It's an honor to have our good friends at SwiftKick be a sponsor of the podcast because I've seen their work firsthand and it's truly unlike any student leadership training I've experienced. They've been voted Best Student Leadership Program unprecedented 5 times, so you know they must be doing something right. As a bonus for our listeners, SwiftKick is giving a $500 discount off their normal speaking fee if you mention Higher Ed Geek when you contact them. I highly recommend their trainings for your campus, as your students will be talking about it for months afterwards. It's really great stuff. Check them out, swiftkickhq.com, to learn more, and let them know I sent you. Now, back to the show. Yeah, thank you so much, Henah, for hanging out and giving us some of your time here for this podcast episode. So we will start out as we always do and kind of move on from here. If you just want to give a brief introduction of yourself and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So my name is Henah Parikh, and I've primarily been in the social impact space for kind of my whole life in different capacities. But I spent the past 5 years of my professional career really in the nonprofit and social impact space. And then I pursued my master's in social entrepreneurship. And since then, I've sort of had a 3-pronged approach to work. So I have my own side business called Impact, where I focus on events and communications for social impact organizations. I do some freelance for The Good Trade. So we are an online publication that features socially conscious brands and businesses. And then my full-time work is with She's the First. And we're a nonprofit focused on fighting gender inequality through education. So I started there about 3 months ago, and I'm the development and communications manager.
Yeah, very cool. So now I always kind of want to break this off into 2 things, because I'm very interested in your kind of graduate experience, but certainly more focused because it's where we kind of have a mutual connection of your undergraduate college experience to start at Rutgers University, where I went to graduate school, wonderful place. So you're really involved there with their kind of community service work and other things. So if you just want to start out talking a little bit about what your college experience gave to you personally and professionally. I'm sure it was a lot, but I guess just just kind of what was that experience and how was it impactful for you?
Yeah, my time at Rutgers was so much more than I could have ever imagined. It was actually my dream to go to NYU, and I got in and I saw the price tag, and then I said, there is no way I could pay this off, especially in the social impact space. So my original plan actually was to stay at Rutgers for just a year or 2 and then transfer, but I just fell so in love with it because it gave me so much. It gave me so many opportunities to do things that I cared about, whether it was student leadership or volunteering. And, it doesn't hurt that I also met my boyfriend, and we've been together 3 years now through the service fraternity there. But one of the main things that I really focused on in my time at Rutgers was service learning. So Dustin, this is kind of how we met, but I had the best mentors, Krista Klein and Karen Artizone, who really have shaped so much of my life. I attended this event called Winter Wishes, where they provided gifts to underprivileged children in New Brunswick, and I was just so moved. I actually cried at that event. And Karen had said, you seem like you care enough about this. Maybe you should think about applying for this thing called the Student Volunteer Council. And so, I started as a coordinator, and I worked my way up to be the director, co-director actually, of the campus-wide council. And I had done alternative breaks and become a leader there and on the e-board. So, all of these things I was doing really kept me close to Karen and Krista. And I ended up taking a course. It was actually supposed to be like a random seminar through the Honors College about social entrepreneurship. And it was with Dean Matsuda, and I just loved it. And I fell in love with all of the coursework and the topics and the readings. And I started talking to Krista about this a lot, saying, there's so much that people can do to affect change in their communities. They just may not know how. And that's really where we started this idea of change makers. So Dustin, as you know, like Changemakers does an entire week dedicated to like social impact programming. So we had Pencils of Promise and Crochet Kids and Toms and all of these, well-known nonprofits and social businesses come in and kind of talk about ways that students can make a difference. And because of all of those things, I feel like that's why I ultimately decided to pursue a master's in social entrepreneurship at Pepperdine, which we could talk about separately, but I think my whole life has really been shaped by my time at Rutgers. My academic work really focused on psychology and communication, but that transformed me. In the work I'm doing now, I'm doing communications, but more so just like how we communicate to each other as human beings. And, in general, like the world around us. But I think having my academic work and then my extracurriculars, like I just had the best time at Rutgers, and I wish I could relive it all of the time.
Yeah, I mean, because my kind of pipeline into all that stuff was Rutgers Changemakers. So like as a graduate student, I helped out with that, and yeah, it was so cool. And a funny thing too now with my full-time job at 2U, which is like a higher ed tech company, our like corporate like charity partner is Pencils of Promise. So like I realized that after I started working there, and like, people were just like, oh yeah, and we work with this organization. Do you know about it? I'm like, oh, do I know about it? And like, so like, it's like, oh, I read the book, I know about them. So it was just really nice that like they, their values aligned in that way. Cause it was just obviously a smart move for them because we work in the digital education space, but working with Pencils of Promise allows us to kind of have a positive impact on education all around the world and access to it. So that was really cool. But yeah, I was very grateful for the experience just to have a small role to play. And that's actually fun fact.
Thank you.
And like fun fact for anybody who has listened throughout my entire podcasting career, and I don't know if I've mentioned it specifically before, but like I did a little like pilot project of just like talking to student leaders at like different clubs at Rutgers that had, and actually She's the First at Rutgers was one of them, one of the students I talked to. Like that's kind of where I like sort of got my start in podcasting and sort of cut my teeth a little bit. It was just like recording people on my phone and like editing the audio and just like pushing out that content a little bit, in terms of just like doing stuff, was associated with Rutgers Changemakers and stuff. So that's a funny personal connection for me. It's actually
it all comes together.
My podcasting start kind of came from Changemakers. So, Krista is amazing, and I interviewed her for my previous podcast, and if anybody can just visit Rutgers. It's like a cool, little city, and just campus and everything is beautiful, and because I met my now wife there as well. Just kind of has that magical power to bring awesome people together.
But it really does.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I'm curious because you got your graduate degree from Pepperdine, and you did that online as well, right?
Kind of. So it was a hybrid program. So it required me to be out there for 2 long weekends a semester. So like 5 days each, where we had in-person classes. And then I also did the rest of my coursework online. And then we had sort of a 3-week global experience that you had to spend in a developing country with an NGO or a nonprofit. So I actually chose Pepperdine, and I think I remember applying when I was in the SAC, like doing Changemaker stuff. I remember I found the program, and I just loved all the pieces about it. It gave me flexibility. It gave me, this very specific niche kind of masters that most people had never heard of or never really done anything with. And so I was really excited, and I loved my time there also because it was so focused on impact. We got to dive into the causes that we care about. And for me, that was the empowerment of girls and women. And that really was the forefront. And that kind of led me down this rabbit hole of kind of more major issues like quality education for girls and sex trafficking and, unsafe working conditions and labor and if things are ethically made. And that's also kind of how I became intertwined with the Good Trade because the founder was in my cohort. And so the Good Trade basically is just an online publication. So we just believe that we vote for the world we want with our dollars on sort of an everyday basis. So we primarily feature brands that are doing good in different ways. So if they're eco-friendly or ethically made or fair trade or what have you. And it started out when I started grad school, and now we have 7 million readers. So that's been super exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on that. That's
oh, thank you.
And we'll link out to all the stuff you work with in the show notes and all the other stuff we mentioned. But that's very cool. Because I mean, obviously, I work in the digital education space, so I was just kind of curious. And actually, one of our more recent university partners is Pepperdine as well.
Oh, nice.
So they are definitely seems like just across the board embracing the future of higher education here. But yeah, because like our program is an MBA program. They have a similar kind of model. Obviously, students take longer to get through it, so they can do their like in-person immersions anytime. But it's definitely like that's I think a perfect model, because it's not as if like digital education necessarily has to be absent from any sort of live human contact. Like that's sort of what it was in the past. But it's like we have live classes for the online students, so they're in with professors live every week, and then the in-person immersions and stuff. So it's just like augmenting these online tools with in-person support and all that kind of stuff. So it's great that you were able to like embark on that and like get a great education without having to like totally disrupt your life.
Yeah, you make me feel like an early adapter. Because I remember when I started, people didn't really take it seriously, or they were like, oh, it's this online thing that you're doing. But really, it meant like I didn't have to quit my full-time job. I could keep working. I was able to keep my loans to a really low minimum because I didn't have to rack up all these expenses moving out there. So I loved it, and I highly recommend it if you're someone who can keep deadlines for yourself and like remember the fact that you're only online once a week watching a class. But yeah, Pepperdine was something that I really knew. Like I never knew much about the school except that it had a beautiful campus, and the campus is definitely worth visiting. I graduated like on the beach. So that was really nice. But yeah, the program was great and I loved it.
Awesome. So I mean, that brings you kind of chronologically, through a lot of your education, and, you highlighted all the things that you're doing now. And I guess across the board, maybe just talking about each of them, or just sort of, as a whole, like what do you enjoy most about the current work that you're doing? And I guess what kind of keeps you inspired to keep at it?
Yeah, I think it's funny when people ask me like what keeps me inspired, only because I've never ever thought about not being in the social impact space. Like I don't think I could ever work in a corporate role, which there's nothing wrong with being in the corporate world, but it was just not a fit or like anything in my vision for my life. So what do I enjoy most? Okay, so with the Good Trade, I feel like I'm always coming across brands and people who are just so excited to kind of bring more people to this world of like, you can make a change with just the things that you buy every day. I think it's this growing movement of people who want to, buy gifts with a purpose or gifts that give back, or anything from like having an eco-friendly mattress or fair trade clothing. So people have just been so excited and eager to talk about that, which has been great. With having my own business, I was laid off, and I wanted to turn that into an opportunity. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to do it. And it ended up really like people were so receptive and open to it. And it's sort of this untapped niche, where there were a lot of small businesses and small social enterprises that don't have the capacity to hire someone full time. So they were saying, I can give you 10 hours a week to do this very specific project. And it gave me the kind of flexibility and interesting work that I don't normally get to do when you're working full time somewhere. And then I just love everything about Choose the First. So I started almost 3 months ago, so still pretty new. But it's a really small team of 5 people. So I get to spearhead our social media platforms and external communications and development. And so I get to try all of these new things and really take things to the next level, which gives me a lot of autonomy and challenges, so that I'm always trying and doing something different. And I'm surrounded by people who are smarter than me every day, which is like a really good thing, because they're so knowledgeable about international development and nonprofit operations. And it just feels like I've found my people, you know. And the mission is something that I love because, as I'm sure you've picked up on, I'm really passionate about education and girls. And so we're so much more than just providing a scholarship and getting a girl into a classroom, but we actually we provide scholarships and tuition and boarding and mentorship. So we're providing this holistic approach that sets up systems for success everywhere, so that she can actually succeed far past the classroom. And then we also have 225 campus chapters. You talked about the Rutgers one. And it's really about mobilizing students to make change in their own communities. So we're launching a fellowship, and we have this new thing called the Action Network, where people can like take action straight from their phone on different issues like intersectional feminism or structural inequality. And so our mission really is to fight gender inequality. And I feel like having this two-pronged approach is like such a great way of tackling that and like achieving that. So it's just so wonderful. Like, I've had experiences that were not the best for my mental health. So this experience has been so fulfilling in the sense that like I'm surrounded by people doing amazing work. But I feel really fulfilled every single day because I see the tangible impact with the scholars that we have. And just sort of like, because it's only 5 people, I get to see everything that I do really at the forefront.
Very cool.
Sorry, I went on like a tangent there. I was just so excited.
Yeah, you covered it all though, so it's good. And I think, especially in this current cultural moment, doing the good, important, I'm sure at times hard work that's associated, with She Is the First, and just like constantly advocating for that, and just, it's important work, and certainly commend you for committing to it, and it's just really cool. Yeah, that's like an environment that feels right for you, because like you said, I mean, it's not even like saying that other things are wrong and no one should do them. Like, you're figuring out, I think just what's resonating with me, like from, all the way at the past of your undergraduate experience, like you said, like you built through like your academic coursework, the skills to align your passions with your strengths to where you're at now feels, from, what you're saying, it seems like that's like a really good fit to where you're able to do like the communications work that you're good at, but it's work that you care about too. So like that's, I'm like constantly seeking out those people that have figured out that formula, because I know, and I don't know if you can like speak to this as like a brief aside, but in kind of like the entrepreneurial sort of zeitgeist and things, like what I keep bringing up in these episodes, and I almost want to like challenge a little bit, because I don't assume that that's everybody who is listening to this, but there's so much of that just with like, people trying to start like side hustles or whatever, but just like the idea of like, just do what you love, just do what you're passionate about and all that. And it's like, well, yes, but I feel like you need to also be good at that work, like, because it's going to be hard. So like, it should be stuff that you're good at, and then build people around you who do things that you're not good at, but they are good at, kind of thing. So it's just that alignment of strengths and passion. I think it's kind of the secret formula. So I'm not sure, I guess, if you felt a little bit of that, or like if that's sort of where you feel like you're absolutely at now. Like, because I think, just if you're in a program of like even social entrepreneurs, but it's just that idea of like, I'm just following kind of my passion blindly, and it can obviously just get risky or just get very exhausting if you're like overextending yourself with stuff that you might not be as naturally inclined to or whatever. But I guess I would say it's a big question, but I guess do you feel like that's, I guess, where you are now, that you feel like you're getting to a better place in terms of like aligning strengths with passion?
Oh, 1,000%. I have so many thoughts on this. Because one question we get all the time from young people, and I would say not even at She's the First, but just like in general across my life, people are always like, well, how do you get involved in social good? And like, how do I find what I want to do? And I'm like, honestly, it is about finding the thing that you're good at and then applying that to the causes that you care about, because that's really like the best thing you can give to the world. Because it's hard if you're like really excited and passionate about a cause, but your skills aren't applicable there, or which they always are. You can always find a way to adapt them. But if you feel like, I really want to do social media, but I've never had a Twitter account, like that can be really, it can harm both you and the organization. So finding the things that you're like really, you excel at and that you're talented at, and bringing ways or finding ways to bring that to the causes you care about, I think are sort of the best way you could go about it. And I also feel like when you're an undergrad, you're kind of treading lightly, like you're going for breadth, not depth, with the causes that you care about, or like the things you want to try, or the classes you want to take. And so for me, I have found that like after leaving college was when I had to think more deeply about like, I only have 24 hours in a day. Where can I commit them? And like, where can I do the most for the things that I care about? And so that to me has just been sort of like a, like as you get older sort of thing. But really, like you said, like aligning my passions with my strengths has been kind of the perfect intersection.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It takes time. Like, yeah, it takes some self exploration and just kind of awareness and, maybe like kind of dabbling in things to where, yeah, somebody's like, well, like social media seems cool, but like, I'm just not good at it, I guess. And it's just like, that's okay, because there's probably other people who can do that and figure out what it is. Cause like, I know for me, what I always think about is like, I would be an awful salesperson, and that's okay, because there's other people who are amazing salespeople.
Right.
And I can, because it's kind of where my role is now, where I feel like it, like I'm still even kind of figuring that out, because I mean, all the stuff I do on the side, I feel like I am finding more of that kind of alignment, but kind of with my full-time job, I'm doing a lot of problem solving and all that. Like, I'm not kind of like in the front of the stage and like trying to like sell people on something. It's like by the time they got to me, they're already like hook, line, and sinker. They're committed. They're
Right.
They're going through their program, and I'm just helping to solve problems and just be a caring human who will help them, and can just do a lot of like just problem solving and tinkering behind the scenes to help the show go on, kind of thing. So
yeah, one thing we say at Choose the First all the time is like, this is sort of a global movement, and we all have a role to play in sort of all the things we do. So like, for example, what you're saying, you may not be the person selling it, but you're the person making sure that they're having a great experience or service with it. And I feel the same way, in that like, I'm not my boss who's out there giving speeches and TED Talks, because I'm not a public speaking person. And I have done program side work, and I realized like programs is not where my forte is. So now I've sort of found this little niche for myself where I'm doing like development and monthly giving and individual donors and all that kind of fun stuff. But that's what like I'm actually excited about, and I enjoy doing it, versus trying to fit myself into a mold where I thought I'd be really good at this and I thought I'd really love it because it's what I care about. But instead I'm miserable, but I'm just going to like keep going. And, So yeah, I think we all have a role to play, and it's all about like, what can we do to kind of move us all forward together.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that's a whole other like tangent and stuff. Yeah, it's just like, if we are just like committed, beholden to this idea of whoever we're supposed to be, and it's like, well, just be yourself and be, again, just like have the self-awareness of what you actually are good at, versus like, because certain jobs and different things are going to have like the cool factor to it, but it's just like, it's like, oh, I'm stressed all the time, or I'm not actually like having fun, or I don't like the people I work with, or just, like those sort of things. So yeah, it's definitely a journey. And sometimes it's like, well, this is what's good for me right now. It's not always going to be good for me forever. And, when it doesn't feel right, I'll, kind of go where the wind takes me and kind of move on from there. But yeah, it's like,
that feels like everyone's 20s. Like,
right. Yeah.
It's not forever, but it's right now, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Because no, my brain is just like connecting all these synapses. Because it's like that. Because I think you could even have something good, and this is either for like work or a relationship. But it's the whole dating analogy with like job searching, I always like to joke about, but just like that you're almost like not just enjoying and doing good work where you are now. You're just like, well, there could be something else good out there, and you're just like never just present. And like, because that's like, you found something good, and it could be like a couple months in and just like, well, I don't know, but maybe there's something else better out there. You just off to the horizon, versus like being where you are and doing good work where you're at. So that's a whole other thing. You
nailed my goal for 2018, which is to like be more present and like enjoy the journey, not always like 5 steps ahead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You gotta, I know. I struggle with that sometimes too, of getting restless, but yeah, it's like, advice that I sometimes hear, often is just like you gotta fall in love with the process, sort of thing. Because it's like,
Yeah.
if you're always like, because I'll get distracted by the bright, shiny sort of like end result or something, and it's like you gotta get there, you gotta climb the mountain for like you can't just be like, wouldn't it be so cool if I like hiked this like super high mountain or whatever. It's like we actually have to do it, but.
And you should probably try to enjoy it while you do it,
Right.
So.
Well,
Yes.
I guess, and speaking of like enjoying things, we'll sort of, move on here. But so if you do want to kind of focus it in kind of the social good space, if there are like certain brands or, different things like that of just like, or just something completely different, outside of kind of your work and those sort of interests, just like, what do you geek out about currently? Is it stuff that you've always been into, stuff that you've recently discovered, and just maybe like how you discovered it?
Yeah. So I'm sure you could tell I've always geeked out about social impact in like general ways. So I went from volunteering to service learning to social entrepreneurship to social justice and now kind of overall. So there's not a day where I'm not like reading the New York Times or going through my Twitter timeline. But on a related sense, like I just love reading and media. So last year I read 52 books in a year, but not so much this year. I didn't do such a good job. But I've been geeking out a lot lately, and I think it's because I'm in my mid-20s, around cooking and interior design, so kind of sprucing up my personal space to be more of like a statement of who I am and like ways that I find it to be cozy and personal. I feel like I used to be really extroverted in college, and now I feel really introverted, where I'm happy to be home, like reading a book and chilling with my cat and like drinking hot chocolate. And then travel for me has just always been a number one priority in ways in like way that I geek out. So there are ways where I'm like, I have flight alerts on my phone, and I like use credit cards strategically so I can rack up the right amount of miles, and all those kinds of like travel hacks, if you will. So those are the kinds of things that I've been like really, really excited about. But generally, I feel like I'm always geeking out. Let me think. Crimes and like mystery stories, I think are really something I've always geeked out about. I really wanted to be a forensic scientist when I grew up, until I realized that I was terrible at chemistry. Yeah, I would say definitely like reading, cooking, travel. Yeah.
It's all good stuff. And I guess, maybe through exploring those a little bit more, like how have those things sort of like positively contributed to your life? Like I feel like I'm thinking travel, maybe any place specifically that you've gone to that was like really impactful, or just the experience of like, cause I feel like I'm there with you. I'm still figuring out like cooking and just sort of how, just building up my confidence, I guess, to start with. And then just like, do I want to just do like Blue Apron all the time? Like, would that be good for me? I don't know. But I guess, they're just like kind of that like exploring phase, like you're saying, just in your 20s, you're kind of settling into adulthood and kind of, routines and just, exploring those kind of hobbies and stuff. So, and I mean, also kudos to reading 52 books in a year. I think you certainly earned like a little bit of a quote unquote off year, because like I'm awful about keeping up with reading like actual books. Like I read a lot online, but you have my admiration for that's a lot.
Thank
So
you.
if I can
Yeah.
ever do that.
Well,
But any of those hobbies.
I did that this year where I'm like constantly scrolling through Twitter, but I haven't committed to like any real books that often. In terms of how they positively contribute to my life, so I feel like my hobbies are great because they adapt to meet me wherever I am. So this probably doesn't make sense when I say it like that, but if I like need a break from screaming internally from this administration, and like scrolling through Twitter furiously, then I have these other hobbies that require me to not stare at a screen, which is great. And I've learned that I can use my hobbies as a way to like do the things that I love with people I love and like make it an experience.
Yeah.
So for example, last weekend I met a friend and we made cookies together, but we also made candles because I had this candle making kit that I hadn't touched in a while. And I thought, why don't we just try this together? So just sort of like making them, like embracing them to be things that we can do as experiences and like gifts. And then I think I just like, I try to use them as self-care in a lot of ways, because as I mentioned, like everything that's happening with this administration is easy enough to stress us out. I read this morning that like I think it was on Teen Vogue, someone had written Lauren Duca. I don't know if you know who she is, but she had posted, and she was like, the stress that this administration brings onto us is the equivalent of like 5 to 7 major breakups each day. So one of the things I'm trying to do is like not be glued to my phone and looking at every single news alert that pops up. And so these kinds of hobbies and interests have kept me sort of like away from all of the current events, especially the travel. I've been really lucky where I've traveled a lot, and we went to Mexico recently, and I think what I've learned the most is to have really low or zero expectations about what you can expect, because I think when we like build up these vacations in our head and they don't turn out the way we want, we're like, that was terrible. But this, like, we went for 10 days, and it actually didn't feel like enough time in Mexico City. And it was just, the culture there is so vibrant, and the food is wonderful, and the people were so lovely. And I just felt like there's so much outside of the US that's happening that I need to embrace, like, the fact that I have the opportunity to travel and to like do these experiences that I otherwise wouldn't get to do. So one of the things that we really did this time around was we did Airbnb experiences. I don't know if you've ever done them. This was our first time trying them, but we did sort of like, we made Day of the Dead bread with a couple. We went to a market and did like a chili pepper workshop. We what else did we do? We painted these alebrijes, which are like masks. If you've seen Coco, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it was just like such an immersive experience, and it gave me that like disconnect from being on my phone all the time and like looking to see what's happened or what's imploded, so to speak.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've stayed at a lot of Airbnbs, but have not done a formal experience with them, which does sound intriguing. Yeah, especially if you're like really getting outside of your comfort zone. Like, it could be sort of a helpful kind of guiding point, you know, that people are opening themselves up, like, please come here to do this thing with me. Like, I want to share this part of my culture with you.
We did one the day after we landed, and it felt like the perfect kind of introduction to Mexico. It was like, he was so knowledgeable and gave so many suggestions, and it was just, I highly recommend doing them, because you also feel like you're living kind of as the locals do, as opposed to like being in a tour group and, you know, being on like a strict schedule of like, we're going to visit these tourist sites, but more like you're just doing what they do on a weekly basis. So I definitely recommend them.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of the touristy stuff, like a lot of the times it's like, I feel like most people can figure them out on their own. Like, you're probably going to see them anyway, and you'll just be like, well, let's just go see them on our schedule, and it'll, you know, that'll be fine. Versus, like you said, like, on a schedule and regimen, and like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, it's like you're missing out on just kind of the true local experience sort of thing, which I think that is what really most people want, you know, most of the time is, you know.
I can't stand when people are like, okay, it's 9 a.m. We have to go right now, right this second. And then it's like, okay, it's 10:30. We finished this activity. We have to go to the next thing. I'm more of like a, you know, take it as it comes, and obviously be on time when you have like things to do, but just sort of enjoy the experience. Like, it's a vacation, and it's not meant to be this like very stringent thing. So yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, I guess if you want to highlight anything specifically, any books that you have read this year, any shows, movies, like podcasts, if there's like, I don't know, if you're into I think you said like crime stuff, like all the true crime podcasts I know that are out there. Just anything specific that you'd want to kind of give a tip of the hat to that we could include in the show notes.
So I just subscribed to Long Reads. I don't know if you know them, but I love them so much. I actually became a monthly donor. So they send you 5 long form features each week. And they can span from the New York Times or just like someone's blog post. And they always pick really top notch kind of articles to feature. So I think, for example, I just read a feature from them, on these Bengali climbers who wanted to scale Everest, and then they had a late start. And so they basically weren't able to get up there, and their guides left them, and most of them died up there, which is really unfortunate and sad. But the families needed closure sort of back home. So they had Sherpas like go up to Everest and bring the bodies back down. and they had a documentary, kind of like video footage following along with it on the New York Times. So it was just a very interesting read that I don't think I would have ever found if it weren't for something like long reads. So I definitely recommend them. What I'm listening to otherwise, so I probably listen to more podcasts than I even listen to music. I could listen all day to like SZA and Gary Clark Jr. and this dancehall playlist that my boyfriend made. But podcasts, I have so many. I listen to This American Life sort of religiously, 99% Invisible, Modern Love, the Dinner Party Download. I feel like you would really like that, Dustin. I don't know why I think
I've listened
that,
to a few episodes, yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun and just like really, it's engaging and interesting and the format is cool. Hidden Brain is, for someone who has a degree in psychology, I just find it really fascinating. Crime related, I just finished Dirty John, which was only 6 episodes, but really, really interesting and something that it's kind of like you're listening to it and you want to scream at the lady on the podcast being like, no, why are you doing that?
My wife just listened to that. She like gave me the Cliff Notes version of just because like, I'm not huge into like that crime stuff. But like I would just like hearing like the summary of it. Yeah. It's just like, it is a wild ride. And I would recommend anybody interested in that kind of stuff to definitely check it out. Cause it's like this almost like, which I don't think we see as much not anymore, I guess yet really. In podcasts, like almost like mini series that it's just like it's that and that's it. Like,
they had like the long form feature in the Washington Post, I believe, or was it the LA Times? I think it might have been the LA Times. And I actually read the full piece before I listened to the podcast. But like listening to the podcast gave me, like because you're actually hearing from the people who went through it, it felt more real than reading it. And it is a wild story from start to finish, so I definitely recommend it. And then I recently just started Homecoming. I think it's by Gimlet Media, and it's really interesting. It's sort of like it's a fiction story played out over a podcast, and the cast is it's a really great cast. It's Catherine Keener, who was in Get Out and a bunch of other things, David Schwimmer, Oscar Isaac, and it's really, I don't want to give too much away about the plot, but it is a fiction story that it kind of reminds you of like those like weird crime, like Night Vale kind of podcasts, but also like a Serial or S-Town kind of podcasts. So I recommend it if you're into like kind of trying something different or new with your podcast preferences.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably more out there than I'm aware of. But yeah, obviously, like Night Vale is just such a unique thing, and I'm surprised. I guess I don't necessarily because I mean I've listened to a little bit because my wife like listened to like the entirety of the series, but just like more stuff like that because I think a lot of people have really caught on to the Serial model after that got popular. But because it's like I think it's a medium that we could play around with a lot and like almost get back to like old radio plays of for back in the day sort of thing. But that's all. It's a good kind of diverse diet there, a little menu if anybody wants to check out any or all of those.
Sadly no social impact kind of stuff there, but I don't know, I just feel like I really love The Daily. Have you listened to that?
I feel like I know what it is, but I don't know. I haven't listened to it.
It's just like daily. It's a 15 to 20 minute daily episode that comes out about prevalent issues, and I feel like it's just a super informative way to start my day because they do like a deep dive. So definitely worth a listen if you're someone who kind of religiously listens to a podcast on their way to work. It's sort of a perfect start.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. I've listened. Like I need to subscribe. I think to Dinner Party Download because I'll listen to episodes randomly if it sort of like comes up in the ether or like I caught a bit of it on NPR when I was like driving or something. I'm just like, oh, let me like go find that episode, listen to it. But yeah, I've enjoyed every single one, and I guess you being like, I feel like you would like this. It's like, okay, maybe I'll just nudge me over to at least subscribe to it so it's like regularly in my feed.
It's just
versus
so
just
fun. I mean, for those of you who are listening who don't have any clue what I'm talking about, it has sort of, so it follows a dinner party, and they have a host. Well, they have two hosts, and they have a guest of honor. But first, they start with, I guess they have like an icebreaker, which is a corny joke from the guest of honor, and then they have like a mixed drink that they have based off of a fun fact or story that they share. They have a whole musician piece that someone comes on and like shares their dinner party playlist. And again, they have the guest of honor as like the main bulk of what they've done. But they've had like, I think like Lin-Manuel Miranda was on there, or Run the Jewels was on there. Like they have some pretty big names, and I don't know, they're just fun. And it's like, it's supposed to be for your weekend, sort of like an update for your weekend of what's been happening that week. And sort of like music you could play when you're seeing your friends and family. So I've been a big fan for a while. My goal is to start making the cocktails that they make each week, but they're a little too fancy for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a very fun format. Cool. Well, I guess then to wrap up this episode, just to end things on a positive note, something or things that you were looking forward to with like your job, life, and the world. As of the recording of this one, we're recording it towards the end of 2017, so it'll probably come out about a month after this. So I don't know if anything crazy will happen in the world between now and then, but just kind of building out some runway for us going into 2018. But yeah, I guess at this point, just looking ahead, things that you are looking forward to, just to kind of end things on a optimistic note.
Yeah. Well, as I've sort of mentioned, 2017, I feel like was a tough year for everybody. And so I'm just hoping that 2018 is brighter, and like, I'm trying to be really optimistic about it. On a personal note, I've come up with sort of like 3 goals for myself, and like my personal growth. So one I said before is to be more present. 2, I'm working on banishing imposter syndrome, because I feel, and I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or just like this, I've always felt this way, but I feel like there's so many women in my life who don't think that they deserve this sort of recognition or like the good things that come to them. And I feel like I'm one of them. And so I'm trying to banish that feeling, because like we should own the fact that all these great things are happening. And then just to take life more slowly. I feel like I have, like I said, like always kind of thought 5 steps ahead or 3 steps ahead, and always kind of comparing myself to other people and where they are in their journeys, or like, oh, this person's engaged, or oh, this person's having a baby, or oh, this person got a promotion and is moving to LA or whatever. And I feel like everything in my life right now is really positive. So I'm just trying to embrace where I'm at and how far I've come, and just enjoy like the opportunities as they come. So that might be a really generic answer, and I'm sorry, but that's sort of my overarching goal.
Yeah, because I think it all coalesces together to just almost like how I always frame it in my head. It's just like trying to go for like Zen status, like where you're just really at peace and just like, like you're content with where you are, present and mindful, and just, I think those are traps that we all can fall in often. So it's good to be aware of them, trying to work against them, and just, just being grateful, for where we are. And certainly always, doing the good work that we do the best we can, and just making sure, you almost like don't take yourself too seriously, or, the world too seriously, to where it's like, because, it's like, just the way that you frame that, I feel like it's just like a whole bit there or something, like, scrolling through Twitter is just like you're getting broken up with like multiple times a day or something, where you're just like,
right.
Or you're also like, you're seeing your ex and just like, oh my God, what are they doing now? Or just like, oh, you're just like seeing like things coming up, and it's just like this recurrent,
I have to send you this article. It was such like a spot on way about like how we dealt with 2017 and how we're going to do with 2018.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just feel like, and I was talking to a few people about this, like we come up with these expectations in our heads of like what the year or life will be like, and then we throw them all out the window because it never ends up the way that we think. So instead of setting up all those kinds of expectations, I'm just all about like, I'm going to like work hard and do my best, and just kind of enjoy the moment.
Yeah, that's great thing to look forward to and work towards. And yeah, I think that's a great place to end the episode on here. Just thanks again so much for taking the time out here. And yeah, again, we'll link out to all the stuff that we mentioned in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, this was great. All great stuff, and really appreciate your time. Just have a good rest of your night and a good kind of winter break coming up here.
Oh, thank you. You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.